I'll make him an offer, Captain. I'm fucking with you, see? You gotta fight through that shit.
Stuck on this.
Why so serious? Why so serious? Why so serious?
What's up, YouTube? This is your friendly neighborhood movie nerd, back to give you guys everything that is going on in the world of movies and TV. And I just realized something. I realized this is like my third or fourth time recording this, and I kept saying that this was my Q3 review montage, when in actuality, I already have a video up that says Q3. So this is technically my fourth quarter review montage, which would technically, if you went by basic math rules, this would make this my last review montage. That's the word I was going for. But obviously I have more movies to watch, so therefore this is not going to be my last review montage. So therefore I am technically lying to you guys through the title. So I'll call this my second to last review montage, covering a majority of the movies that I have seen in the year of 2018. Surprise, surprise, they're still disappointing. This year still kind of sucks, and we still have a shit ton of directorial debuts to go through. So without further ado, this is my official Q4 set of review montage.
There's never been a black cop in this city. We think you might be the man to open things up around here.
Hello, this is Ron Stallworth calling. Who am I speaking with?
This is David Duke.
Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. That David Duke?
God. Last time I checked. What can I do you for?
Well, since you asked, I hate blacks.
BlacKkKlansman, which is Spike Lee's next movie, and ironically enough, it should be called BlacKkKlansman, as I like to call it, because I'm funny. Spike Lee's next movie, which goes into detail on the efforts of Ron Stallworth, who is a black police officer that set out to infiltrate the Ku Klux Klan within Colorado Springs with the help of his associates Flip Zimmerman and the rest of the Colorado Springs Police Department, facing several bouts of injustice and good old American prejudice along the way. So because this film was actually directed by, an accomplished director and not one of the millions of directorial debuts that we got within the year of 2018, I very, very much enjoyed this film. This film had a very set pace, a very set tone, and a very set flow that it stuck to. The performances were, for the most part, out of this world great. Shoutouts, of course, to Mini Denzel himself, John David Washington, who is a star in the making with some of the most amazing chemistry and charisma that I've seen put to screen in a while. And also, of course, shout out to supporting players Adam Driver and Topher Grace, who crushed it as Flip Zimmerman, and David Duke.
And that David Duke?
God.
I love that Topher Grace can basically just sit back and do whatever he wants now and not have to worry about any sort of monetary thing, because between That 70s Show and whatever residual checks he got from Spider-Man 3, he can just sit back and do whatever he wants.
God.
Here's the problem with this film, though. It's another situation similar to Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where my favorite aspect is also my least favorite aspect, where Spike Lee has a very definitive message that he's going for, and he accomplishes it, for sure, to say the least. The problem is that the way that the film closes out, it's very similar to the opening of the film, but in a different way, where rather than close out and actually see, these characters get a resolution, instead what happens is you have John David Washington and Laura Harrier, who plays his girlfriend. She's also really great in this movie too, by the way. You have them on a moving treadmill, very Jackie Brown-like, very blaxploitation 70s-like, going towards a window, moving towards a window like this. You can't tell though, because I'm leaning forward instead of going on a ramp, so the effect doesn't look as cool. They look outside and they see a bunch of KKK members lighting up a cross, and then it cuts to a bunch of footage from the Charlottesburg riots that happened last year, and just a bunch of people yelling into the camera. And I get it, pride, racism is still very much alive in America. I get all that. The problem is, again, film works through subtlety, and that's something that Spike Lee still really doesn't understand. It hasn't stopped him from being a great filmmaker. He still released some of the best and most influential, poignant, and important films of the last decade, but unfortunately, it undercuts the tone of what he's going for just a little bit, but not enough to derail this from easily still being within my top 10 favorite films of the year. This film was everything that you would have wanted it to be, and I highly recommend that people go out and watch it.
I'm telling you, the wars are coming.
White power! Black power!
Knights of the Ku Klux Klan.
That's us, Stallworth Brothers.
We're on a roll, baby.
You ever feel like you're waiting for something to happen?
It pains me to see you embarrass your father.
So good news, that movie that I fell asleep during for my last review montage, American Animals, I actually saw it this time. And my thoughts from it the last time that I saw it have not changed a bit. I just wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt.
You're in, or you're out.
So American Animals is directed by Bart Layton, who, again, this is not a directorial debut. Wow, I'm shocked. I'm on a roll. We'll see how that lasts. And it tells the story of 4 young American college students who decided to steal and go on a heist and steal a bunch of, I think they were Darwin books from the University of Kentucky, where they attended. The 4 teenagers, of course, being portrayed in the film by Evan Peters, Barry Keoghan, Blake Jenner, and Jared Abramson. The interesting thing that the film does, however, is that it takes almost like a pseudo-documentary approach where it mixes and meshes footage of the actors with the actual people giving interviews. And it creates this kind of new edge that I've seen, very similar to season 6 of American Horror Story Roanoke, where you have it bouncing back and forth, where the difference here is that in that show, everybody was actors. But the idea is still kind of the same, where it's you have actors giving a fictional recreation of something that actually happened.
How can I tell you if I'm in or I'm out without you telling me the first thing about what I might be in or out of?
This would be something dangerous and very exciting.
The filmmaker really tries to show the difference between crime as we see it on screen versus crime as it actually happens in real life. This is a really cool montage where they come in and everything happens very smooth, like set to the same tune that Ocean's 11 was set to, where they, like they pull the sheet over. It's every little typical montage you see when it's going through the robbers' heads of how they're about to execute the heist.
This library is home to the most valuable book in the United States.
Performances all around are really great, although I do have to say though, this is the 3rd outing that I've seen Barry Keoghan on after Dunkirk and Killing of a Sacred Deer, and I have to say, after these 3 movies, I'm not a fan of that guy. He's really whiny, he definitely never comes across like he's meant to be taken seriously, and I feel like a lot of the really serious, really intense stuff that he could get across is often undercut by the fact of A, how young he looks, and B, just how inexperienced he is. So I say in a few years he could get some really good experience and could actually have some really good acting chops. Evan Peters, on the other hand,
$12 million. You really need to see how easy this is gonna be.
now that kid is officially a star, and I really want to see him get more leading roles, including that, hopefully, that Kurt Cobain biopic that I am fingers crossed is happening. I don't care who they get for the rest of the movie, as long as he's playing Kurt, that's all that matters. As for my thoughts for the rest of this movie though, I have to say it ended up kind of translating across a lot more boring than I thought it would, and it's another one of those situations that I've been having a little bit of problems with films since last year, and it's happened a couple more times since this movie, which is where in trying to mimic real life and be as accurate to real life as possible and break a lot of the tropes associated with typical heist films like this, it kind of undercuts what it's trying to go for, and it ultimately ends up making the film experience a much lesser one in the process. For example, the entire idea is that these guys are trying to rebel, but the problem is they all come from such privileged upbringings, so it doesn't exactly make their plight and their struggle as relatable. Now I get it, that may be more accurate to real life, rich kids trying to rebel, but for the purposes of a cinematic story, it doesn't necessarily make the most amount of sense, and it doesn't exactly feel the most relatable. And that's what ultimately kept this from being another one of these great breakout indies that I've been seeing over the last couple of years. So unfortunately, I can't thoroughly recommend American Animals to a more mainstream audience, but if you're a lover of indie films, then you'll love this movie.
You waking up years from now, wondering what could have happened and who you could have been.
I also want to give a particular shout out to that score composer. I don't remember who did the score, but that score is one of the most haunting that I've heard all year. It's really, really well composed.
Come on! Oh, this is my life. This isn't some game.
Can you please not touch the model? Thanks.
I love singing and dancing. Hiya, folks.
50 cents, I'll suck your dick.
Oh boy, now we get to the big one. The one that, before the end of the summer at least, we got into a bunch of whole new movies, a bunch of whole new topics of discussion. Back when this movie came out, I remember one of the biggest things that was talked about on the internet was how was the studio going to make a movie with a joke like this in it? Funny. And now here's the most controversial opinion that I might have of this year. I'm just kidding. It's not going to be the most controversial opinion I had this year. I liked the Happytime Murders. Does that make it a good movie? Not by damn sight. But considering the fact that this movie literally had nothing going for it, I'm not kidding. This plot is literally the same recycled B plot from every single cop drama that you've seen, both in film and on TV, ever made. But I am not kidding when I say that the gimmick and the world setting of puppets actually did a good job of getting me even more invested in this.
Most decorated offices in this department. What do you see?
Looks like a robbery gone wrong to me.
This wasn't a robbery. This was a hit. What the?
Because here's a couple of things that I noticed immediately, both before and after I watched this film. A, outside of that one joke, there really wasn't that much actual R-rated stuff in it. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of cursing, but outside of that one joke, it's really just like a typical R-rated studio comedy, and it really didn't have that much going for it, which kind of shocked me and actually kind of made me impressed because, like I said, if it had probably just been another one of those standard studio comedies, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. So kudos to the studio for reversing my already expectations. So, hey, another example of good subversion of expectations.
One out there is killing puppets.
Hey, handsome. You looking for some rotten cotton? I'm a woman. That's okay. Yeah, that's even better. Got a good time for you.
But the other thing is that I was actually surprisingly invested in all of these puppets, and I don't know if that's just because of the decade that I grew up in or because the puppeteers in this movie did such a good job. It's directed by Brian Hansen, who is the son, obviously, of the legendary creator of the Muppets himself, Jim Henson. And the other interesting thing is that this film is obviously very self-aware about its origins. Like, it is well aware of the fact that it comes from, yeah, Muppets are for kids, so, and it kind of throws a little bit of that in the audience's face, and I think it does that for the most part for very good measure. And of course, that is all locked down in our lead character, who I would say is the Muppet character, Detective Phil Phillips, voiced by Bill Beretta, and he does a supremely good job. I take him seriously every single bit of the way, and even though a lot of the comedy in this movie comes from how serious the source material is treated, I still think all these voice performers all do an excellent job with it. To the point where, ironically enough, my biggest flaw with this is the human characters.
God, are you all right? I ruptured my...
Like, all the supporting players, they're doing the best they can, but it's very clear that it's a paycheck role, specifically for Elizabeth Banks, Joel McHale, and Leslie David Baker. But Melissa McCarthy, I'm sorry, I don't like her. Even in her straight roles, I don't like her. She's been annoying in every single thing that I've seen her in, no matter how straight she pulls it. Okay, I'm sorry, but Melissa McCarthy, if you annoy me even in Spy, which is by far the most downplayed Paul Feig movie that I've seen to this date, I'll get to that, I'll touch on that a little bit later, then I'm sorry, you're not doing it for me. I don't know if it's because I just got started at the wrong point in your career. It doesn't help when Identity Thief is the first full-on movie that I see from you, but yeah, Melissa McCarthy, easily my weakest part about this movie.
Pure ecstasy.
I'm not doing this.
Do it.
But yeah, overall, Happytime Murders. Is it a perfect movie? Absolutely not. Does it recycle tropes and trends and jokes that you've seen in a million other movies? Absolutely. Does that stop it from being enjoyable? Hell no. I actually had a really thoroughly enjoyable time with this. I recommend the Happytime Murders.
Where is your dignity?
That's right. I said it. Told you it wasn't going to be my most controversial opinion so far in this video.
Well, fuck me.
Maybe.
A few weeks ago, I met Emily, this wonderful, elegant person. Our sons brought us together, actually.
Come here, little dude.
Can me and Miles have a play date today?
A drink?
Yeah, Paul Feig directed this movie. That's right. I was talking about Paul Feig and Melissa McCarthy before, and who knew Paul Feig can actually make movies?
I think you're joking, but great.
Don't worry, I'm just as shocked as you guys are, because A Simple Favor is one of the biggest surprises so far this year. And to top it off, this movie came out in September. September. Just to put that in perspective, this is the same month that gave us...
Hello. Take this suit off. You go take this.
least somebody's doing something.
But yeah, I should probably tell you guys what the story of this is. Anna Kendrick's a single mom who runs one of those mommy vlogs. I still can't get over the fact that Anna Kendrick is old enough to be a single mom, considering she's 33, but you know, she still looks like she's, you know, 20, whose kid makes friends with Blake Lively's kid, and Blake Lively is, oh my God, I can't even talk about the story anymore. I have to ooze about Blake Lively for a second, because for the longest time, I would shit on Blake Lively because of her performance in Green Lantern. But after this movie, oh, I take everything back. Blake Lively is awesome. But yeah, Paul Feig directs this movie basically like a pitch black comedy version of Gone Girl, and it's completely shocking to me how intriguing and engrossing this film is. It plays out like a soap opera, but it's got enough dark, interesting, and engaging story elements to it, and it all comes down to the fact that the two leads of this movie are fully fleshed out three-dimensional characters with a lot more flaws than on the surface.
No. Come on. What's the wildest thing you've ever done?
Blake Lively, you could tell, is one of those characters that you know is just going to be like oozing and manipulative below the surface. She's just so cool that it's that type of character that you're just immediately attracted to, and it also helps that she's one of those characters that always says just everything that people are thinking at the time.
Is an enigma, my wife. You can get closer. You can never quite reach her.
But the big shock to me was Anna Kendrick, who not only once again proves to me that she can actually, you know, act with one performance, but also gives off a lot of, you know, inner, more below the surface subtleties with this performance that I didn't even know she was capable of, and it legitimately creates this really interesting dynamic between her and Blake, because for the longest time in the movie you think that Blake Lively is the one holding all the cards and holding all the chips and manipulating her, but Anna Kendrick, she's A, a lot smarter than she lets on, and B, a lot more manipulative than she is willing to let on. Like, she gets what she wants like immediately, to the point where I really feel bad for Henry Golding, who knocks it out of the park. I didn't see Crazy Rich Asians. That's like the one big movie from this year that I didn't see, but if his performance in that was anything like his performance in this, I am very interested to see what his James Bond audition tape looks like.
It's just you being paranoid.
By the time the film ends, you understand that Blake Lively has indeed met her match, where if it was anybody else, she would have been able to out-manipulate and out-maneuver them. But outside of the two female stars, the real star of this movie is Paul Feig, who goes literally from a string of movies that looked like reject Saturday Night Live sketches that were somehow assembled into feature-length films to easily one of the best looking, most unique films of the year, because it manages to set this really dark but very obvious on-the-nose tone. Like, the movie is surprisingly self-aware, and it works out really, really well. Also, low-key, Rupert Friend from Homeland has easily one of the funniest lines in this entire movie, and quite possibly of the entire year.
Number one, they're not Indonesian children, they are Vietnamese teenagers. Number two,
there are, of course, a couple of random bits of comedy that don't really make sense, a couple extras that feel like they should be on a Saturday Night Live sketch and not here, but for the most part, I thoroughly recommend A Simple Favor as a black comedy, as another one of those Gone Girl-esque thrillers that sort of followed up Gone Girl in the last couple of years. I very thoroughly recommend this movie.
Were you aware that he took out an extra $4 million life insurance policy on Emily before she disappeared?
People do terrible things for their own reasons.
He thought you knew more than you were letting on.
I want to know your secret.
Quand j'étais petite.
Do you know what my job description is? I'm in acquisitions. I look up and I catch what falls out of the sky.
Now this is looking much more like the typical 2018 that I'm used to. Another disappointment from a director who I knew could do better, because like I said, the typical 2018 movie is either a directorial debut that is completely tonally inconsistent, or a movie from a previous director whose track record is for the most part really great, who completely disappoints all around. And of course this time we have Shane Black with The Predator.
What's on the ship?
Yes, in a Predator movie, it is proven that autism is indeed a superpower, because that's not a trope that Hollywood has refused to let die over the last 10 years that absolutely should. This movie was just so disappointing at first, where you have such a great setup and I'm convinced that Shane Black and Fred Dekker were just trying to troll the studio with this movie because they knew that the Disney merger was coming, and they're like, okay, we fucking hate Hollywood. Let's try and make this movie as terrible as we possibly can make it before the mouse swoops in and ultimately devours us whole. And hey, if that's what their goal was, kudos, because this movie makes Iron Man 3 look like the greatest movie ever made. Literally, outside of like a few brief funny moments from 3 of the characters, that of course being Boyd Holbrook as the lead, Trevante Rhodes, and Sterling K. Brown.
Hey Baxley, if your mom's vagina were a video game, it'd be rated E for everyone.
This movie literally had nothing going for it. The CG was awful. The entire film was so dark, I could barely tell what was going on. The Predator scenes, few and far between as they were, could have been a lot cooler. The plot makes no goddamn sense at all, because the entire time you're waiting for the Predator to start ripping through people, and instead you get a bunch of stuff about a government conspiracy. You get Sterling K. Brown throwing a bunch of one-liners, trying to make the best of really terrible source material.
I get a cookie now.
And then you have this entire subplot with Jacob Tremblay, which is a subplot that I'm pretty sure he wanted Ty Simpkins for, but Ty Simpkins, A, he watched Jurassic World and was like, wow, Ty Simpkins is terrible, and B, I'm pretty sure Ty Simpkins was a little bit too old for this part.
Predators just don't sit around making hats out of rib cages.
But yeah, in a rated R Shane Black directed Predator movie, you have this entire subplot with Jacob Tremblay where he's just walking around being bullied and everything because he's autistic, but of course he's secretly a super genius because, again, fuck, why not? Although I will say there was one pretty unintentionally funny scene where he's walking around on Halloween in the Predator garb that his dad decides is a smart idea to mail to him from South America. He's like, oh, here's this super dangerous alien armor and gun. Let me mail it to my 9-year-old son. That's a smart idea. I'm a great dad. Actually, you know what? That is probably the only consistent thing about this movie, Boyd Holbrook being a shitty dad. But yeah, that's the first 2/3 of this movie, and you know, you have the typical assembling of the crew and everything, and the crew feels so mismatched and just there and like there to recycle really terrible jokes.
If your mom's vagina were a video game, it'd be rated E for everyone.
Yeah, every bad Keegan-Michael Key one-liner that's in the entire movie, yeah, they're all, that was in the trailer, yeah, they're all in the movie. And Thomas Jane has Tourette's out of nowhere, which is so strange because, like, he sort of half has an understanding of what to do with it, and his character is very interesting. The problem is, again, he's just one of many that just folds into the background. It's just another one of those cases where there's too many characters to keep track of, and the writers just either A, don't know how to give enough of them development, or B, just don't care to give them enough development. We may die. And then by the time you get to the third act, it's just a really terribly edited basic Predator movie, and I'm like, okay, A, why couldn't this have been the whole movie? And B, the editing in this movie is just the worst. Literally, there should be an award for worst editing of the year that should go to this movie. Literally, there's a scene in the last act where they're all getting chased by the Predator, where Sterling K. Brown, he's trying to use this armored rig in order to fight with the mega super Predator that comes down and kill the previous Predator for no reason, because the previous Predator wanted to help humanity, but the big Predators wanted to just kill them. Like I said, this plot makes no sense. But literally, the editing is so bad where Jacob Tremblay distracts him as he's trying to use this rig, and he turns his head like this, and boom, like he's dead. Like he explodes all of a sudden out of nowhere. Honestly, like there was a certain point where I couldn't even tell he was dead. But yeah, that's Predator.
The ultimate predators.
Disappointing movie from a critically acclaimed director. 2018 in a nutshell.
My name is Lily Colson, and I'm 18 years old. These are my 3 best friends, Em, Bex, and Sarah.
Next up, we have Assassination Nation, a movie that looked like one of the most badass, relevant-looking movies of the year, considering that it kind of looked... It's really weird because I saw this movie around the same time that American Vandal Season 2 came out, and that was another thing just in media in general, because again, movies and TV are so similar at this point that they're basically interchangeable, where they both tackled kind of the social media argument in terms of the dark side of, oh, what would happen if certain things on social media got leaked, whereas American Vandal tackled it obviously from a much more realistic standpoint, because again, it takes more of a true crime element. But Assassination Nation, this movie that's directed by Sam Levinson, who was the son of critically acclaimed director Barry Levinson.
And this is the story of how my town, Salem, lost its mind.
And to top that off, he's also not a first-time director, which also makes it very refreshing to see that this is not a directorial debut. And while this movie certainly did have a lot of entertaining points, the problem is that the film takes so long with its build-up to finally climax where everything is going nuts. That by the time, basically, for lack of a better word, the purge, because it's what happens, is that's basically become Hollywood's only explanation to sort of realistically tackle what happens when everybody just loses all semblance of control in society, is just turn it into the purge, where you have these 4 girls. And the weird thing is that a lot of the conflict that happens in this film doesn't actually affect the 4 of them until like the last, I would say, like 10-20 minutes of the film, which creates a really weird pacing issue, because while the rest of the town is being affected by these awful events with this awful hack.
Dude, the principal got hacked.
I'll give him like 5 days before he commits suicide.
That unveils everybody's social media leak, and of course the town reacts in a very over-the-top negative way. And again, it makes sense because it's supposed to be a personification of the internet as it is now.
I just don't have any sympathy for people that get hacked.
For real? There's 2 types of people in this world. People that have come to terms with privacy is just dead.
These 4 girls, though, that are the main characters, that are portrayed by Odessa Young, Suki Waterhouse, Abba, and Hari Neff, are kind of just going through the film for the most part really unaffected until like the last 10-20 minutes when it officially becomes the purge.
Then there's the old people that are still trying to fight it.
What do you have to hide anyway, Lil?
Which sucks, because once the stuff actually sets in with the buildup to the actual purge parts, the movie's awesome. But it's the in-between little moments where they're just kind of chilling, you know, basically letting you know what their characters are. There's points where the dialogue is really on point and really poignant and really awesome, and other points where it really just kind of lags and wavers and meanders, and it literally sounds like I'm listening to Instagram dialogue, which is kind of terrible.
I live for this type of scandal, to be honest.
Which sucks, because this movie is stylish as hell. Like, the color palette and the vibrancy that this movie generates is completely unlike anything that I've seen so far this year, and it really is awesome. And put to use with a better director and a much better script, this movie really could have been something awesome and special. But because it's 2018, it just fades into the ether with all the rest of the disappointment. So Assassination Nation, it's fun, it's entertaining. I would definitely say you'll get your money's worth. A couple underdeveloped characters here and there, but the most part, the action and the intensity of it is really awesome, and it is really poignant. The twist at the end, if you even call that a twist, because the movie's basically over by that point, and the movie's basically already forgotten, oh, who's behind it at this point, and then when they finally tell you who it is, you're like, oh, yeah, I don't care.
This is your world. You built this. Don't take your hate out on me. I just got here. You may kill me, but you can't kill us all.
Dear Mr. Core, 3 days ago, my son Bailey was taken by wolves. No one in the village will hunt them. My husband will come home from the war soon.
We have a Netflix movie, and okay, wait for it. A Netflix movie, a previously critically acclaimed director, and the movie didn't suck. I'll just put in an explosion graphic here. Seriously though, hold the dog. Holy shit. And I wasn't even a fan of Jeremy Saulnier to begin with. I didn't like Green Room. I still haven't seen Blue Ruin. I've heard really great things about it. But Jeremy Saulnier and his muse making Blair return to do, basically, for lack of a better word, the Wind River of this year, only with a supernatural twist to it. And the movie's fucking awesome.
I must have something to show him. So you come to kill it? To kill the one that took him?
I came to help if I can.
This movie gave me one of the most visceral experiences of the year with one goddamn shootout. Regardless of everything else that happens in the movie, I'm sorry, I don't care if it's like Rogue One where the one sequence makes up for the rest of the movie and a little bit of the confusing things. I don't care. It's 2018. I'll take my licks where I can get it, because that shootout was fucking incredible.
People died out there. The hillside is scattered with pieces of bodies.
Basic plot is that Jeffrey Wright plays a wildlife hunter who receives a letter from a woman based out of Alaska who's played by Riley Keough, who tells him that she wants him to come north to their commune in Alaska and kill the wolf that murdered their son, while her husband, who's played by Alexander Skarsgård, is serving overseas. But once he gets up there, he of course discovers that not everything is as it should be, as you know, most movies basic screenplay storytelling should go. And the stuff that happens afterwards is some kind of a mix between an old school revenge story and like I said, I'm going to use a term that I used for my review last year with Wind River, where I said it's got a lot of elements of a Native American ghost story.
That's what you get when you talk to the villagers. People are dying.
If I had to say the flaws of this film, it would say Jeremy Saulnier tries to cross the two with each other, and they don't always mix well, and it especially provides for a lot of confusing character arcs and motivations, specifically with the Alexander Skarsgård, Riley Keough character, and also their Native American friend, who was the one that ends up opening fire on the cops in that sequence that I told you about. I really am playing up this scene, but there's a reason for it, because I am not kidding when I say that that scene is literally one of the most pulse-pounding, gut-wrenching, hold your breath, ass on the edge of your seat type of sequences that you wait for in movies. And the fact that I got that from a Netflix movie this year is fucking nuts. But yeah, this movie generates an absolutely incredible atmosphere. The sense of tension that Jeremy Saulnier is famous for is fraught throughout this entire film. The performances are all really good, even if the character motivations don't make enough sense to really carry a consistent through line and narrative. It was at least enough for me that I was never annoyed really or distracted by it, and that's what ended up making this one of the most delightful films of the year. I would most definitely recommend Hold the Dark, and the best part is it's right on Netflix, so you have no excuse to not watch it.